that, I'm going to introduce Kyle Lane. He's from the City of Peoria Fire Department, and he's going to walk us through some health and welfare key items.
Thank you very much. Good to be with all of you. I'm glad that we can spend this time together. And just real quick, we want to go over some health and safety things for you guys as you're out there. So we're going to talk about the health and safety regarding heat-related illness. And we want to talk a little bit about your calling. If you had to call 911, what's going to happen there? So
hold on
ready?
there.
There we go. So we want to be cool and beat the heat. All right, so if you had to activate an emergency medical services or the fire department and you had to call 911 in an emergency, here's just some quick helpful tips for you. First, we'd ask that you stay calm, right? It's very hard for the operator to hear you if you're panicking. And so take a deep breath and just stay calm. And the questions they're going to ask you are, what is your emergency and what's your location? You should note that the call first comes to the police department when you call 911, then it is transferred to the fire medical department. And so in that, there's going to be several people asking you what your location is. Please remember that the help is already on the way, but they want to really make sure they have the right location. Particularly as a crossing guard, you're going to have to give the intersection you're at, or if you're in the between intersections, you're going to have to be really specific about where your emergency's at. And so they're going to push on that, and then they're going to ask you what the emergency is, about how old the patient is the patient breathing, and then they're going to give you some instructions as to what you can do to help the patient based on the information you give. They're also going to ask you your name and phone number, and they're going to ask your phone number in case you get disconnected so that they could call you back. And then, of course, you're going to want to request help from the school office, however you do that, either by radio or phone. Next slide, please. When we're talking about being out helping the kiddos cross the street, we're talking about personal protection. And personal protection, we're going to talk about our health and safety in a minute. But as far as if you encountered an emergency where you had to help a child or someone else, you want to use personal protective equipment, right? And so basically we think about things like gloves, latex gloves, not really latex anymore, but those protective medical gloves. And then especially with kind of illnesses rolling around, maybe a mask or perhaps safety glasses or something like that. We really want to emphasize those scene safety. That is you being safe, right? If a kid falls in the street, we don't want to be out in the middle of the street trying to help them with their their cut or their scrape or something. We want to get them out of the street into a place where you're safe. And so keep that in mind. We don't want to become victims ourselves. Anybody know how hot it is today? Like 100 million degrees probably outside, and it's not going to get cool anytime soon, right? And so we want to talk about heat-related illness, okay? We've spent a lot of time probably this summer inside, especially with the pandemic going on, and so we probably have spent all that time in the AC, and we may not be used to the heat. So you need to be aware of heat-related illness. And one of the first things we find with heat-related illness are heat cramps, right? You may have had these before. That's when you get that muscle spasm or pain. It's usually in the legs, but it can be in the arms or even in your stomach, right? And the way we prevent heat cramps is the same way we prevent most heat-related illness, and that's we stay in a cool spot, right? And we drink a lot of water, a lot of clear liquids. Sports beverages are mentioned on here. Sports beverages contain electrolytes. And basically think of that as salt. And so they have a lot of sugar in them because you wouldn't drink salt water, right? So we want to reduce the amount of sugar we're intaking. So if you're going to use a sports beverage, dilute that down with a lot of water. And then if you have cramps that last longer than an hour, you're going to want to get medical help. Heat exhaustion is related to heat cramps, right? It's probably the next stage though. And that's when we have this heavy sweating and we're getting pale and we're feeling weak and tired and related to the heat, right? And when we have heat exhaustion, it also might have weakness or a headache and nausea and vomiting. If we get to nausea and vomiting, we're pushing on to the next stage, which we're going to talk about, but that's something that you'd want to seek medical help for, right? And so, and as well as fainting. Anytime someone loses consciousness, we want to make sure that we call 911. To prevent heat exhaustion and really heat cramps, any heat-related illness, we want to wear lightweight clothing, okay? And we want to wear long sleeves if we can. We want to protect as much of our skin as possible. That helps with the cooling. And then a wide brim hat is useful, right? If you have a ball cap, that's fine. But really that wide brim hat is super useful in keeping us cool because it provides that shade for us, right? And when we're feeling overwhelmed with the heat, we need to drink lots of cool non-alcoholic beverages, okay? Probably not even super ice cold, but more of a, not hot, but a room temperature type beverage will absorb quicker, right? We want to rest in a shaded area. If we can, we'll try to get to the air conditioning. You know, that's may not be possible, but just even getting to the shade, it's significantly cooler to have the sun off of us. And then if you have to, you want to take a cool shower, a bath, sponge bath, but you can also take a rag, right? If you can't get into a shower, and you can get it wet and then put it around your neck or wipe under your armpits, okay, over your head. Those kind of things to increase that evaporation, which is what sweating is doing, right, to cool us down. And then we want to rest. Heat stroke is the final stage of heat-related illness, and that's a medical emergency, okay? You're going to definitely call 911 for heat stroke. The main thing we'd emphasize with heat stroke is red skin that's hot and dry. If it's 112 out, someone's been in the sun working and you touch their skin and it's dry, they're in trouble. Okay, so they may have a throbbing headache. They might be dizzy. They might be throwing up. Again, if someone's unconscious, we're going to call 911 for sure. But that dry skin, that means that they've run out of the body's cooling mechanism and we have to help them. Okay, so we need to get the paramedics there, get an IV started. So if you think someone's having heat stroke or even severe heat exhaustion, right, go ahead and call 911 and take that victim and get them to a shady area, right? You might run into some kids maybe in the afternoon who aren't looking so hot. Get them to a shady area where we reduce that outside temperature, okay? And then we're going to try to cool them down. Get a wet towel, put it around the neck again, under the armpits if we can, okay? Ice packs are great if you have them. You may not have them, but again, we want to do clear liquids, preferably water. Urine, most people may not know, but urine is a great indicator of how hydrated you are, okay? So when we talk about looking at our urine, clear urine means you're hydrated, right? You're pushing out mainly water, and so you have extra water in your body, and so that's great. When we start getting colored urine, then we start getting into areas where we're short of fluids. So you can see on the screen here, the darker that urine gets, the worse off we are, okay? Even light yellow means we're behind, okay? So we want to drink more water. Your urine really should be clear in most cases, okay? So if you're getting into the bright yellow orange area, then you are definitely behind the 8 ball on your fluid intake. So we want to drink lots of fluids and get that urine back to clear. Here in Arizona, where we all live, right, we need to be drinking constantly. Even when we don't feel like we're thirsty, especially during the summer, we need to keep pushing that fluid through because we're losing a lot of fluid. Sun exposure is a big issue, of course. Here we get to have the sun out most of the time, but it also causes some problems, right? And you can see on the screen there that exposure to the sun can cause premature aging, cataracts, and skin cancer. And so we want to reduce sun exposure. And so we want to talk about that here real quick. Who's at higher risk for sun damage? You can see here people who go out unprotected or have excessive exposure, right? You have a lot of exposure working outside, okay? And if you don't wear sunscreen or you don't protect yourself, then you're at higher risk. People with fair complexion, blue eyes, you can see it there, family history. Or if you've had a lot of sunburns in your early life, you're at higher risk for skin-related issues. So we want to be safe. I'm going to use this little acronym, SAFE. First, shirt and arms, SA. We want to wear loose-fitting clothing, okay? And long sleeve shirts and long pants are preferable. I know we like to wear shorts and a t-shirt, but in fact, being out in the sun, you're going to be cooler, especially if you're working, crossing, if you wear long sleeve shirts and long pants, okay? And then tightly woven fabric. We want to wear things like cotton type things. And then the F in safe is for face, right? We want to protect especially our face because that's a hard one to keep covered up, right? I know we're wearing masks a lot now, but even with that, we still have a lot of our face exposed. So a hat provides a nice shade, especially that wide brim hat to keep it off your neck. And then you want to use sunscreen with UV protection, A and B. And then at least SPF of 15, I'd say higher. Okay, 15 would be the bare minimum we'd want to use. We want to use something much higher than that, get up in the 30 to 50 range for sure. And you're going to put on generous amounts and you want to reapply it frequently. Okay, that sunscreen isn't going to last all day. So we put it on before we go out, but maybe we put it on when we have a little break when we're crossing, and then we're going to put it on for our afternoon shift as well. And then, of course, it's for everyone, right? Kids, adults, but especially if we're going to be out in the sun, right? It's a good practice every day to just put on sunscreen if you know you're going to be outside and you're going to be going out. So shirt to protect your arms, just, you know, not a short sleeve, we want long sleeve, and then we want to protect our face, and then everybody needs to do this. All right, so some quick reminders here, and then we'll get to why you came, you know, learning about that crossing. Take care of yourself. We want to prevent heat-related illness by drinking lots of water. Keep drinking, you know, even if you're not thirsty, be sipping on water, keeping that water up in your body. Be aware of those signs and symptoms. If you start feeling ill, take a break, get some help, and then know what to do if you actually are suffering some heat-related illness, right? And if you have to, don't be afraid to call 911 if you're getting sick, you're vomiting, you're feeling dizzy, losing consciousness, those sorts of things. So again, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm sorry we can't be in person, but I'm always excited to be invited to participate. So have a great year. Be safe.
Thanks, Kyle. Looks like we had a couple people raise their hands, and we have some monitors looking at the chat. So if there are any questions right now that we want to address.
Margaret, this is Brandon. One thing I want to note here is if anyone does have a question, if you could type it in the Q&A box instead of the chat box, since those are kind of flying by kind of rapidly and harder to go through. So if anyone does have a question, you type them in the Q&A area, we'll respond to them, or at least review them and maybe follow up later if we can't respond to them during the session.
Okay, that's a good note. It's easier for us to monitor and address the questions if they're in the Q&A. So if you could type them in the Q&A instead. And that's my fault. I actually did direct everybody to use the chat box. So
reviewing even the chat box, I don't know if I'm missing it. I'm not seeing any questions in there. I guess I have a question, and in the meantime, if we're waiting for any questions to come in for Kyle. Kyle, I've seen some sunscreen SPF 80, SPF, I mean, I don't know if it's up to SPF 100 or 200 or 500. Does that higher number help you? Does that protect you longer? Can you address that? Are you really getting better protection? Can you put it on and go out in the sun for 24 hours straight without getting so much as a light tan, or how does that work?
No, you're going to still have to reapply no matter what the SPF number is, okay? The SPF number is an indication of how much protection that's giving you while it's on your skin. But once you pass around 50, getting up into 60, 70 range, yes, it's more protection. You end up, though, probably paying a little more, and then it's a negligible effect, right? So the more, it's not all the same, right? 15 to 60 SPF is a huge jump, whereas 60 to 70 is a really minor jump. So 50 is probably a good range to shoot for, 50 to 60, but you're still going to have to reapply it. You know, even the ones that, there might be some that say they're longer lasting, we'd still recommend you just keep reapplying it, right? And this is a good time to mention the spray sunscreen. When you spray it on, you still need to rub it in, okay? Just spraying it on the surface isn't sufficient. You still have to rub that in.